we have a question here about therapy and whether you chose to go into it. And I obviously know that you didn't, but I just want to maybe have you touch on your reason for not doing so and what your general thoughts are on therapy for those who have experienced any kind of sexual abuse or domestic violence.
Okay, so the World Health Organization says that there is, in their constitution, that there is no health without mental health. And let me say that a child who is sexual abused, I'm sitting in the congregation and there are all kinds of things that triggers my sexual abuse. There is voice tone that triggers sexual abuse because of that tape that's constantly playing in my head. There are stories, there are biblical stories that triggers my sexual abuse. So stories such as Tamar and Abner, that's a trigger for me. That's a woman who was sexually abused, raped by her brother, and no one did anything about it. Her father did nothing about it, which is very similar in my thinking to a person who is probably sexually abused at home, incest, and the neighbors or the parent or the auntie or there are people in the homes who know about it who don't say anything. Or I'm sitting in church and the pastor is preaching about the virgin's birth and I'm triggered because I'm asking the Lord, could I be a Virgin Mary? Would I have been worthy? Or I am triggered by the story of Joseph and Mrs. Potiphar. And so that this conversation says it, and I'm still getting to your question about therapists, so that this conversation says it, we talk about sexual abuse and we talk about it in the light of the girl or the woman being sexually abused by a male person. But if we look at the biblical historical content, we see that with the story of Joseph and Mrs. Potiphar, it was a woman that was sexually abusing a male. Very similar in my thinking to sexually abuse that happens between an employee and employer, a politician, a doctor, a pastor even. And so there are all kinds of stories on the news. There's voice tone, there's clothing, there's maybe a prostitute that I may pass that triggers me. But because my abuse is hidden and it's stuffed down, it comes out in what appears to be a safe way, and that safe way is being a workaholic. I was slowly killing myself, physically, spiritually, socially. As a alcoholic consumes himself by drinking every day. In my addiction, there was no plateau, it seems. I would pass out from sheer exhaustion and still dust myself off and keep going. So there is the need for professional intervention. I chose not to go that route, and I would not encourage anybody to do what I did. But I decided that, you know, the Lord and I had a super cool relationship. I could hear him talking to me. I figured if I could hear him talking to me when I was doing my worship times, we could continue that conversation and he could lead me in the way that I needed to go, who I needed to talk to, what I needed to do. And the impression that I got on my mind was there's certain books that you needed to read. I had no idea what those books were, but I decided that I would trust him I was fasting, I was praying, I was doing those types of difficult work. And he led me to the place where, I've got to say that this took a good 25 years. This was not an easy fix. And so it started with me forgiving the perpetrator.